Welcome, busy gamers. Today we're going to be talking about Hogwarts Legacy. What's good, what's bad, and that all-important question, is it worth your time? Now, if you've joined me for another one of these videos in the past, feel free to go ahead and skip straight to the section you're most interested in. If not, let's head right into the overview for the game. Hogwarts Legacy was developed by Avalanche Studios, and it was published by Warner Brothers Games. This open-world action RPG lets you write the course of magical history. Hogwarts Legacy is set in the 1800s, and it primarily centers around the Wizarding School of Hogwarts and its outlying hamlets and villages, including the previously seen Hogsmead. In it, you take the role of a Hogwarts student, but predictably, you are not a normal case. You're thrown into the deep end of magic as a fifth year with no real previous training or experience with magic. You're forced to catch up on your knowledge of the magical world at a breakneck pace, all the while you're dealing with your unique ability to see traces of ancient magic and the role you'll have to play in foiling a plot by dark wizards and the goblin uprising. Now, in Hogwarts Legacy, the focus is on the main story, but a large investment was made in making you feel like you're part of the school, with a wide variety of activities to engage with, such as dueling tournaments, Summoner's Court, think of it as a magical version of shuffleboard, broom racing, collecting, fighting dark wizards, and puzzles. You're also, of course, going to be attending class, but this is not like the Persona series. It will primarily be a means for illustration of the story and to learn key spells or to gain quests, versus some kind of a task that you're going to be needing to address daily. Now, taking place in activities that I've mentioned will progress your character, unlocking new spells, increasing your level, and providing you with talent points to customize how you interact with the magical world. If you fancy yourself a dangerous herbologist, invest in talents that improve the effects of each plant you grow. If you want to embrace yourself in dark magic, you can of course develop your ability in curses, or if you've just got a favorite spell or combination of spells, you can improve those for greater effect. There's a ton to go into in this game, but this is a review, not an overview, so let's go ahead and move on. Now, at the time of this review, I have played Hogwarts Legacy for about 45 hours. I'm a completionist, so in this type of game, I've engaged with every little side quest that I could, exploration activity, or puzzle that I could be doing along the way. I've advanced the main story through the second trial, and a couple of seasons as well. So what is good about Hogwarts Legacy? The story overall is great. I think it's interesting, it's compelling, but while the game focuses on the main story, that isn't what I want to focus on here for the review. I think the main story is good, and it builds a solid level of mystery and suspense, but the way they weave the story together with that of your everyday life at Hogwarts, traveling to the surrounding areas, that's what makes it really special. That's what makes it feel engaged. Where in some games you feel like you're just performing some route task or chore in between major story missions and cutscenes, I never felt like I wasn't working on the main story, so to speak, in Hogwarts Legacy because of how well this was done. Let's also talk about the set dressings and the environment in Hogwarts Legacy. You can tell that a massive amount of care was taken into the environment of Hogwarts Legacy. To illustrate, each house's common room and bedroom areas are extraordinarily different. They're packed to the brim with things to look at and interact with. Gryffindor's common room has an old-school aesthetic for the castle, and it has massive pictures. Hufflepuff's looks like a cross between the Shire and an underground library of some kind. Ravenclaw has astrology maps everywhere, and Slytherin's is actually an underwater stronghold that's filled with artifacts. In fact, if you knock on the window, you can even get the Kraken to knock back. It's not just the common rooms, though. Hogwarts is a maze of stairways and corridors, but where in most games a corridor would just be a corridor, each stairway or hall within the castle feels different. It has themed pictures, decorations, and collections to see. In addition, because of the magical nature of the game, not only are there more objects and details packed into one place than many games, they're all, or approximately all of them, are animated and they're lifelike. A few of the sets of armor even annoy each other to the point they come alive and have knockdown, drag-out fights that result in armor strewn across the floor. The sheer variety of content and activities in the game is also something that we really need to call out here. There's always something to do, and because of the variety, nothing ends up feeling stale or forced. Many of the activities are indeed very optional, letting you choose whether you interact with them at all, or at least whether it's something that you want to focus on versus something you might do for utility. In the first season of the game alone, you're going to be able to take place in time trials, racing, a rather cocky witch with your broom, participate in dueling tournaments in crossed wands, solve puzzles around the castle, and in environmental tests called Merlin trials, each of which try to get you to utilize your spells in new or unique ways. You're going to be finding and solving mystical hedge mazes, you're rooting out camps of enemies that include poachers, dark wizards, spiders, and capturing and collecting magical beasts. You do all of this while completing a large host of side quests, obtaining collectible items and lore, and attending class. This doesn't even touch on the Room of Requirement, which is the perfect example of something that can be a focus or utilitarian in nature. The Room of Requirement enables you to grow plants, brew potions, farm materials, and upgrade your equipment, but if you wanted, it can basically turn into its own miniature Animal Crossing style game with a large amount of space to decorate with several internal rooms and a large outdoor area. For me, this dovetails nicely into the reward system and the feel of constant progression within the game. The story unlocks new spells and abilities at an even pace, always giving you something new to try out, and leveling unlocks talents, each of which have interesting and noticeable effects instead of just applying small boosts to a player's statistics. Everything you do in the game will net you some form of reward, exploration gaining you experience and filling in collections, but levels and raw power aren't the only rewards to receive. There is a large pool of rewards that focus on aesthetics and lore. For example, you can unlock the new appearances for your equipment, including the ability to customize the handle of your wand, new models and modifications for your broom, and there are also decorations and color palettes and things of that nature for the Room of Requirement that include statues, portraits, and even entirely new flooring. This makes it feel like no matter what you're doing or engaging with, you're going to be getting something out of it. Many activities are also even tied to bonus challenges that are outlined in your field guide. Accessibility is also something that's very key in this game to me. Because of its IP, it's going to appeal to a pretty wide audience, many of which aren't always your typical gamer or are at least much more casual in their approach to gaming. Having seen the difference in how each difficulty plays out, I actually think they've done a pretty excellent job in making the story mode easy enough to progress without removing fun, but they're also not necessarily focused so much on a casual audience that a core or long-term gamer can't find challenge in the upper difficulty levels. The last good I'm going to be talking about here is the combat. Initially, I'd worried the amount of spells could create a stale or repetitive experience, but as the game progressed, I found the give and take in combat provided an engaging experience. You're constantly balancing your offense and defensive skills, trying to perfectly time your shield charm in order to reflect spells, and dodging around for positioning, basically so that you can follow up with your own quick bursts of damage as you combo your spells. Enemies also have a variety of skills, tactics, and shields for themselves that really kind of keep combat fresh. I will say that for combat, I do suggest using a talent to have at least 2 spell slots or spell slot active spells at any given time. This will allow you to basically access 8 of your spells without going into your spell tree and remapping them. It's somewhat of a negative for me that you have to do this with a talent point versus just something that can be unlocked throughout the normal course of the game, because this is truly convenience and it's not really a power increase, and I don't really like seeing that in the talents. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about what's bad about Hogwarts Legacy. One of the things that bothered me the most was an odd similarity in the character models. Throughout the game, you're going to be meeting several characters that seem to be the same person with a mild change in their skin tone or their hair. I don't think this would be as noticeable, but while the game has a large variety in some areas, there's very little variety in height or weight between character models. And outside of a few exceptions, there's no real variety in the look for age between students either. I also struggled with how they decided to place timers on crafting within the Room of Requirement. Growing plants takes between 5 and 15 minutes, and the timer only advances as you play the game. This makes for an awkward mechanic in which the first thing I typically do is set my plants to grow, and I hope I remember to collect them as I finish a session playing. This mechanic is similar to gathering resources from your magical beasts and making potions, though the brew time on potions is much shorter at 30 seconds to 3 minutes depending on the brew. Honestly, that shorter time almost actually feels worse, because what it results in is a player standing around doing absolutely nothing as it completes. You don't have time to go away and come back, but it's really not that long. I'm not sure what the best solution for the growth of plants is, but everything else literally could have just been materials based, allowing for instant crafting instead of creating an odd time sink that feels like a tedious chore instead of fun. So let's go ahead and move on to one of my last things, which is flight controls. Maybe this is better on console, but on PC, I always felt that flying your broom felt clunky or unwieldy. I know a lot of people want Quidditch added to this game, but as it stands, I cannot imagine engaging with it, regardless of my level, regardless as my level of control just felt more like turning a semi-truck on ice instead of a small flying object. There was no real variation in speed, causing you to either be at a breakneck speed or a slow crawl, so I couldn't just speed up or slow down regularly, and that was kind of a deal breaker for me. So let's move on to the ephemeral efficiencies. How does Hogwarts Legacy treat your time? By and large, the game always gives you something you can do within virtually any length of gaming session, at least allowing you to complete exploration collections or puzzles in a short section. That's very positive, and most quests, including the main quest, can be broken up into bite-sized chunks with logical breakpoints where you can save and pick them back up later. That being said, as we mentioned in the negative section, there are some things that take needlessly long, such as feeding and grooming your magical beasts, and since they provide materials that you're inevitably going to need for late game upgrades, most players are going to feel the need to complete some of this busy work type of task, especially since money is a premium in the game if you ignore the systems that allow you to craft and instead opt to purchase items in order to save time. Let's move on to our final scores. I gave Hogwarts Legacy a 9. This game is one of the few games that I've played in the past few years that I've had a hard time putting down, costing me many an hour of sleep. It's a true love letter to anyone who grew up wishing they could get an invitation to Hogwarts and to find out they were indeed magical after all. It envelops you in a world that is meticulously built and a satisfying story. Most games built from a strong IP find themselves resting on the laurels of the brand, but Hogwarts Legacy is jammed full of content. While a baseline interest in the intellectual property is probably going to help it stand out for you, if you're interested in Harry Potter, you're going to be interested in the game. The game does hold on for its own, even for those who are not familiar with its source material, and it kind of sets its own path in my opinion. So let's move to the ephemeral efficiency score. For this one, I'm only going to give it a 7. For all the good it builds up with meaningful and bite-sized quests and activities, its score has to be held back for odd decisions made with time gating in its crafting systems, which almost feel insulting to me, and tedious mechanisms for gathering resources. So that's my review. If you've stuck with me, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Please, if you like this content and you want to see more, drop me a like or a subscription and just give me more feedback in the comments. Until next time, have fun gaming.